We're live. Who knew it? Who knew it would happen bang on 12:30 on a Friday? So I'm joined today by Mike and Tristan, and we do a lot of these chats, but we don't often talk about lettings, property investing, landlords. So we thought it'd be a good time this afternoon to reach out. Anyone can fire comments in and questions to us if they want to, but really just reach out to the landlord community, the property investing community, anyone, estate agents, anyone involved in property that's got a question, can obviously fire it in. We're live across quite a few different platforms at the moment. So if people are watching and they can hear us, if you just hit the like button or just put yes in the comments so we know that you're there, that would be absolutely phenomenal. Most people at the moment are, I think, in the Landlord Property group, which is great. If you're watching in the Landlord Property group, just hit us a like and give us a comment. So we're going to cover today, guys, the podcast, some of the episodes that have already been released, some of them that are coming soon. So listen out for those because you get a flavour of what's going on. A little bit of a summary of the budget, which is not going to take us too long to talk about from a property perspective, and a few other things that are going on at the moment. But Mike, you're in bed 3 by the looks of it at the moment, and it's been...
I have no idea.
Oh, have we lost your signal, maybe?
I certainly can't hear.
Might come to you, Tristan, just quickly. Thank you, Andy, who says, yeah, loud and clear. Appreciate that. Tristan, it's been a very, very busy October for our lettings department, for our property management department, and also the launch of the podcast as well, which is great. So from your point of view, what are the trends you're finding at the moment in the landlord marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's been incredibly busy, not just because of the preparation of the podcast. The market's still proven to be buoyant. Properties are going extremely quickly, as we've seen all year round. And as I said in our live probably about 4 weeks ago, roughly, I don't see it changing unless we start seeing an increase of stock, which we did start to see more evaluations and a few more instructions across the board. But there's still not enough to replace to maintain prices at the level they were, which is causing prices to continue to push up, in my opinion. But yeah, still incredibly busy, and people are still keen to rent properties, which is great news.
Yeah, excellent stuff. We mentioned the podcast. I'm going to just put in all the comments for everyone to see. The link to the Apple link for anyone that's on iPhones or Apple. You can see the one today. This is actually episode 2. We've got Darren Parsons on this episode from Styles & Co. This is actually an accountant that we've managed to get on camera. So if you're a landlord or you're an estate agent or you're just involved in property and you want to know more about tax, limited business information versus personal buy-to-lets, this is a really good kind of 35-minute episode for anyone that wants to listen in. Now, we've got someone in the landlord group. It's put as Facebook user because in the groups they keep it private on this. But they've asked about finding landlords and agents for serviced accommodation business. Mike, I don't know if that's something that you've looked into or spent any time in. I would imagine serviced accommodation at the moment, with how things are in the world, has probably gone from a really difficult business to maybe a bit more active, maybe outside of London, I'm not sure. But from your point of view, I'm not sure if the signal's back on your Wi-Fi. Any sort of help or tips on that front?
Wi-Fi's going strong.
Yeah, we've lost Mike to the Wi-Fi world, so we'll come back on that. I mean, from a serviced accommodation point of view, Tristan, we've done a lot of build to rent, and in a lot of build to rent, often a floor of that becomes available, or a couple of floors of it become available for serviced accommodation. So one of the tips that I would give the person asking the question is to look at the buildings that are being built at the moment, the big, large buildings in the town centres, and the ones that are being built from a build to rent point of view, because you often find at least a floor or two of those become available for serviced accommodation. And if you're looking to invest yourself in serviced accommodation, happy to speak to you. We often have, we just sold a block of flats, for example, 6 units that would have been perfect for serviced accommodation, and potentially you could have purchased those from the outset, bought the freehold as well. So they're the sort of things. I think we've got another one due with about 7 flats that's coming available next year. So feel free to DM myself, Tristan, or Mike if you want more information on that. Tristan, episode 1 of the podcast last week was with Akil from our mortgage broker. So we spoke a lot about creative finance. We spoke a lot about commercials, change of use and things like that. So for the landlords out there at the moment, what's it like in the finance world? Is it as cheap as it is in residential? Is it a great time to invest? Would you be advising people in buy-to-lets, HMOs, commercials? What's kind of your overall view from the summary of that particular episode where Akil shared so much light?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from Akil's perspective, I do quite a lot of content with him because he's very useful from that. He deals with sort of hundreds of millions of pounds worth of lending across the company. And it's very useful for that. But from what we've seen and what we've done in our videos as well, and from the podcast, interest rates are the lowest I've ever seen for buy-to-let with smaller deposits as well, anything from 25 to 40%. We've seen one a couple of weeks ago that was lower than 1% for a buy-to-let, which is absolutely, it's pretty much giving a property away there. However, we have to bear in mind prices won't stay that low forever. There will obviously eventually be an increase on that. But from what he said, he doesn't see prices going up for the next 4 years. He sees them low for that period of time, and then we'll see an increase in that, which someone that's dealing with it day to day and sharing that information is very valuable in my opinion. And I don't see it increasing anytime soon, but there may be a slight increase, but with how low they are, they're still lower. Even with a small increase, will still be lower than they were typically before.
Yeah, interesting. I think what we didn't know when we recorded that podcast is what's going to happen with inflation and also how that's going to impact the base rate next year. I think what we do know is that the government wants to keep the market going, and that's why when we look at the budget this week, we could cover it in 60 seconds because there's basically nothing really to look at from a property point of view. There's a little bit from a developer perspective with cladding, which is probably going to increase costs on building flats and things like that for developers. But actually from a property market perspective for the average landlord and homeowner, nothing really to cover. So hopefully that's going to be really positive. Luke's on LinkedIn. He's just checked in with us. He's mentioned about arrears. How's it looking at the moment, increased or not? I know I haven't checked this recently, mainly because it doesn't seem like it's a problem to find a tenant at the moment, but actually tenants in situ paying rent. The data, as far as I'm aware, when I looked start of the year or middle part of the year, there was about 9% of the UK private renters that were in arrears at that point. And that's comparing that to, I think, about 7% this time last year and maybe as low as 3% the year prior. So we did see that the whole furlough lockdown element of things did increase rent arrears slightly, but not maybe as drastically as the media potentially portrayed. I don't know if Mike, are you back in?
I think I'm back in the room. I've tried. I'm on the third Wi-Fi network, and it seems to be doing me a treat.
Good stuff. Rent arrears, Mike.
Yeah, rent arrears. Our current rent arrears are 0, which is a good reflection of the local market. I think we might see a split in the next 12 months of who.
Oh, lost him again.
And this is a bit of a prediction.
We can't have this as a prediction and then you leave us empty. It's the key moment.
We need a fourth Wi-Fi.
Yeah, maybe hotspot from the phone. Tristan, what about if you kind of jump in there? Obviously, rent arrears for us as a lettings business at the moment is 0. Yeah. You're talking to landlords that are potentially got properties under management with other estate agents. What's the general theme? What's the topic at the moment?
Yeah, so there has been a slight increase of rent arrears. I don't have the exact numbers to hand. However, that is actually on my blog that's going to be going out next week. And we will also cover it in our market lettings market update for next month, which will come out, like I said, end of next week. So if you guys keep an eye on that, I can give you the exact numbers for that. As an overall, there's certain areas across the country that have gone up slightly more than others. But typically where we're based, there's not been a substantial amount of increase, which is obviously great news from a landlord point of view.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is that because we're in the home counties, the property market's been really buoyant. it's quite an affluent area. So rent for us, as long as I've been in an estate agent in this area for the last kind of 19 years, it's never been a drastic problem. I think where the rent arrears potentially are more of an issue, private landlords, I think is a common one. You might find some of the HMO elements of things, or some of the sharing accommodation. There's a bit more of an issue there, where potentially people have been made redundant, moved out, not been able to pay, and then you've not been able to fill them. But at the moment, the market's so active with tenants that actually, if you do have rent arrears, if you can get the tenant out now and get someone in, you've got the pick of some world-class tenants. But you just need an estate agent, a lettings agent that's got a really good reference company, and also someone that's going to take control for you and treat it like an asset, not just a transaction, which is where we come in. So Tristan, back on the podcast, we've put obviously the link to Spotify and Apple in the comments here. Spoke about Kill. So we've had from a finance perspective, we've had an accountant on. Next week we've got Mike, who I guarantee had better Wi-Fi when we were talking. And the reason why we wanted Mike on, although it looks like a plug for ourselves because he's obviously one of our own, Mike's background, for people that don't know, it's very much been in investment strategy, portfolio strategy for landlords, and how to actually expand people's portfolio if that's what they want to do, or if people have a goal with their lettings properties or portfolio to do something different. It might not be growth. It might be pension schemes. It might be maximum rental month by month. It might just be reviewing finances and things like that. That's Mike's background. So that's a really good episode for anyone that's got plans with their lettings portfolio and they're not quite sure which corner to turn next. That one's exciting. We also had Megan from Arla. So a couple of little takeaways for you, Tristan, on both of those, because to get someone on from Arla was absolutely brilliant. And then obviously to have Mike talking about goals and things like that was really good too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from the Arla perspective, we all know that legislation's ever changing, and it's getting tougher and tougher for landlords with making sure they're compliant. And still day to day, we're speaking to so many people that aren't aware of the changes. EICR is obviously a big one. A lot of people know of, but not everyone does. This is something that you need in order to rent your property now. Is to have a satisfactory EICR report. So it's important from that side. We also spoke about the potential changes in the near future. So over the next 12 months, obviously we can't predict an exact time scale because it's dependent on the market of how quickly it goes through and is confirmed. However, just because legislation is being announced, there is an opportunity for you guys to dispute or raise your opinions or concerns of the changes. It doesn't mean it's going to be heard, but it's an opportunity for Arla to fight your corner as a landlord. So we also cover that of how you can do this on the podcast as well. So if you are a landlord or you're thinking of investing and you want to know, or you just want general knowledge of the property market of what's happening, then it's important. You should definitely watch this podcast. It's very useful.
Yeah, I mean, I was unfortunately not able to make that one. So I'm actually really looking forward to that on episode 4 with Megan, because I know Megan's very active on social media and she's got some really, really kind of good opinions on things. So that's going to be exciting. We've got litigation solicitor on episode 5 and Dave from AFP. So those 2 podcasts will be coming out next, but actually to get a litigation solicitor on to talk about, I guess, just giving everyone that follows us a little bit of security, because he gives some pearls of wisdom from a legal perspective. And Liam works for Rowbury Morris, which is one of the best recommended solicitors in and around the kind of south of England. And he, as a litigation solicitor, he's very much in the court of law when it comes to land disputes or landlord issues and all different types of sections. So that was a great podcast, that one as well. Any takeaways that you can share with everyone, Tristan, from that one?
Yeah, definitely. And obviously the podcast does go into real fine detail. So we're not there to scare you. We're there just to state the facts. Because unfortunately some things do happen and you need the advice of the professional, which is why it's great for him to come on board. But we spoke about a couple of things. That you had one recently where a tenancy agreement that was brought from WH Smith, where we spoke about the importance of having a good agreement in place to protect yourself, and how he laughed about it and said, I'd never touch that. And just went into detail of the compliance side of what you need in order to evict someone, and what you don't, if you don't have, like I said about on the last one with Megan, that compliance is always changing. So there's certain stuff you need in place in order to serve a notice. So if you haven't complied with those, then what the process is in order to get your tenant out if there's a worst case scenario. So we go into detail on that side. So once again, highly recommended. All these podcasts we're doing give value in certain ways. And this is not something to scare you. Like I said, it is there for just your knowledge and understanding.
Absolutely. Mike's managed to jump off the call. He's got in the hamster wheel and got some power back into the Wi-Fi, just about enough to give us an answer on that moment where my prediction is, and the live kicked out. I mean, you couldn't have timed that any better, but his kind of forecast on arrears, we might see those on lower income who are close to the 30 times income multiple start to struggle with rent arrears next, whilst those at the upper end will stay close to zero in arrears. And I think from my point of view, I spoke to an economist who looks at sort of an analysis from a behaviour point of view, and the conversation that he was having on the Zoom chat that I was on was very much around the amount of labour shortage there is in the UK at the moment. And actually, when you draw the graphic of age brackets, how many people are over 100, down to 60s, 50s, 40s, it kind of does this Christmas tree effect. And then when you get to 19 to 15, for whatever reason, the graph moves in like that. So there's actually a shortage, just generally from a population point of view in the UK, between 15 and 19 years old. I haven't actually gone back and worked out why people weren't having babies back then. But what that has meant is that lower income multiple level, there's less people. And because there's a labour shortage, he said over 1 million jobs void at the moment, that means that the bottom end of the market, people having to pay more, wages are starting to go up. And as a result, I think rent arrears will be less and less of a problem moving forward. And Mike, from his perspective, has sort of commented in the same way that we said, which is here in the home counties, we're quite fortunate with the type of area and the finances in the average household, that it's not so much of a problem as long as you use a good referencing company. I mean, touch on referencing company, Tristan, because you're dealing with tenants, day to day, and landlords day to day. Is there any flags that we've had recently, or because there's so many options with tenants, are you not really having a problem? We obviously use a really good referencing company that everyone can just fill out the forms, and it's fairly straightforward, but they flag if there's an issue, if someone doesn't disclose it, much like a mortgage offer, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my process is not just the referencing side. Obviously, you get a gut feeling when you show someone around, and that's where my expertise come in place, and why it's important to have someone at my level sort of showing around from start to finish. So, and 30 times the rental amount. I've got no concerns on the tenants that I've housed. I wouldn't put someone forward that I wouldn't put in my own property. So it's important to make sure that you feel comfortable with who you're putting in. I did have an offer for someone recently where I said to the landlord, I told them the honest truth, and I just said, look, we've got 6 offers on the property. There was favoured towards one. I said, look, we've done a video call. This is my first impressions. The call's yours. But she was like, look, I really appreciate that information. She went with someone else. They've still passed with flying colours. Their income was way over the affordability. But yeah, no concerns for me whatsoever with anyone we've put forward. But that's because I have quite a strict process in place.
Yeah, and I guess that's where, when you're working for the person, in this case, the client is the tenant and the landlord for us. I think because we view things in a slightly different way to the average lettings agent out there. We don't look at it and say, right, the client is just our landlord. The tenant is also our client as well. And I think it's really important that people understand that, because we're serving both parties. We're trying to do right by both. So we would never bring a tenant to a property that's not going to work for them, because that's not the right thing to do by the tenant. We're not just looking to cover a landlord's rent and mortgage. We're looking to make sure that there's a long-term option there, and that the landlord doesn't have any hiccups down the line, and also the tenant doesn't have any hiccups. Because if you get into rent arrears or you have problems on that, that's going to really impact the tenant's credit moving forward, and it's not the right thing to do for us. So if we think someone's stretching or there's murmurs of potentially a problem, we try and advise on both parties. Obviously, from a landlord's perspective, we treat it like it's our own property. We treat it like it's our own asset. It's not a transaction. Makes a big difference.
So just touching on that, Ian, we actually had someone just about 3.5 months ago, actually, in Reading, where the tenant had a change of circumstances with her position of job. her income obviously reduced, and it was agreed mutually that the landlord would let them go if we could find a replacement tenant. And obviously we did find a tenant pretty much the day after, and helped her go. She found alternative accommodation before she even spoke to us. So we do try our best to work on both sides, like you said.
Absolutely. I think it's so important. You know, we have a bit of an ethos across the group and the brand, which is people before property. And I think in our industry, it's very easy to go property before people. So yeah, that element of things is really important for us. We've got episodes 7 and 8 of the podcast is very much an overview. So I'm looking forward to that. Start of December, we're going to give a bit of an overview, an end of year summary, if you like, on exactly what's gone on this year and what to look out for as a landlord next year. And I think we've got a couple of snippet guests coming in, maybe 2 or 3 different guests, kind of 3, 4, 5 minutes to talk about bits, which is going to be quite exciting as well. Can you give us an insight into who they are? Do they know they are the guests yet?
They don't know yet, but they certainly will by the end of today. So we are going to get a couple of different people in. We're going to get a mortgage broker back in just to give an overview of the mortgage world, what's happening, changes, what to expect from next year based upon the recent sort of changes and announcements. I'm going to have an inventory clerk in talking about the importance of an inventory, disputes, because those who have seen my blog recently, a lot of disputes have been due to end of tenancy cleans. So just going in terms of how we can resolve these issues as an industry, because there is a big problem with disputes at the end of tenancy, and the TDS announcement recently has confirmed sort of into more detail of what they are. So it'd be sort of good to hear from the mouths of an inventory clerk that sees it day to day, checking in, checking out of properties. And then obviously we're going to have an overview between us of what's happened. And I will get another guest, but I'm going to leave that open for them to think who they want.
Yeah, we're talking about maybe someone in the trades, potentially someone in the maintenance aspect of things, maybe someone sort of professional, sort of end of tenancy cleaner or something along those lines where we can potentially help out. One thing I want to touch on as we sort of come towards the end of this conversation, Tristan, is I speak to a lot of people in trades at the moment, and a lot of business owners that are in trades, and they're making a lot of money at the moment, which is fantastic because the market's gone bananas. So, you know, plumbers and plasterers and general maintenance or refurb people, they're as busy as they've ever been, and they're making huge money levels for their business, which is fantastic. You know, we want the economy to move forward. And what a lot of them often talk to me about is finding a property that they could either refurb or a buy-to-let property. One of the things that we spoke about in episode 2 with Darren from Styles & Co was actually talking about if someone was in the trades and they had this big pot of cash after, you know, 2 years, 3 years or whatever it may be, should they buy a property as a buy-to-let through their limited business? Now, I think there's an opportunity here for people watching that are in the trades to reach out to us to actually have a conversation about how we can make this seamless, because sometimes it looks quite daunting. But, you know, if you're an electrician or a plumber or a plasterer or someone in refurb and you're thinking, I've got this pot of cash and I'd like to invest it in property, start to build a little bit of a portfolio myself or refurb something to make some money on, then we can effectively advise on the purchase, whether they're buying for us or not. We speak a lot on the podcast about family homes and things that make best value. We can also help them with extra contractors if they need it, which I doubt they would, but we can help them with the right finance package. We can help them with the right legal representative. We can almost build their power team for them. So it's very much a convenience and easy way to get a buy-to-let property, and an accountant if they need an accountant, so that they can make sure they're doing right by their business. And of course, we can then rent and manage it for them as well. But I just think it's worth putting that out there, because I know there's a lot of people in the trades that think it seems complicated. I want to do it, but I don't know how. That is what we're here for. That a conversation with you, Tristan, for half an hour on Zoom with someone in the trades would probably go a long way to build that power team for them and realize that dream is quite easy to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm happy to sit down, and whether it's in person, whether it's via Zoom, and go through that with them. I already do buy-to-let of the week, so it's just from a different aspect. But yeah, that's the whole idea. We created the podcast is to give that advice, and the whole idea we formed the lettings business is to be different and help people invest in property and how to grow the perfect portfolio, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I just want to put that out there. If there's a business owner out there that's making a lot of profit and they've got good reserves in their bank account for their company at the moment, they don't want to go for the inefficient tax perspective of paying it all out in one dividend to do something with. Before you do anything with it at the end of the year, let's have a conversation, because if you want to invest it in property, we can help make that very tax efficient by putting you in contact with an accountant, a finance strategist, whether that's a Keel from our mortgage broker. We can put you in contact with the right solicitor as well. And obviously we can help do a lot of the heavy lifting to source the property, let the property, market the property, and manage the property. So yeah, I'd love to talk to people in trades or business owners that are thinking right now is the time to invest. So we've covered the budget, we've covered the podcast, we've got a great video that's probably more launching this weekend, but it is actually on YouTube now if people want to get ahead of the game. But we'll show some promos of it on our socials this weekend, where we met with Peter Licorinas from HMO on Steroids to talk about what a premier level HMO actually looks like. Me and you were really lucky that we actually managed to go down and look at one of his finished products, one of his mid refurb products as well. What a great experience that was, Tristan. I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah, same. It was good to see, like I said, from start to finish, really. Not even a half product. It was still to the bare walls, really. But yeah, it's certainly a massive transformation, some useful information that Pete shared as well. Obviously, that last property could have easily been a larger, more bathrooms, maybe an extra bedroom. But then he went into detail of why they've done it to that standard, why they've done it and not added the extra rooms when they could have. So I'd highly recommend to look at that, especially if you are in the HMO market or looking to invest in the HMO market.
Yeah, I thought it was great. And like I say, if you keep an eye on our socials, because we've got a 7.5-minute video where we actually have, I have a conversation with Peter, you have a conversation with Peter. We're in different properties at the time, actually, because I was in the finished one, you're in the refurbed one. But if people want to know a little bit more about that as well, it just gives a different twist on buy-to-let. I mean, effectively, it is a buy-to-let, but it's a buy-to-HMO-let. And actually, his products are fantastic. So, yeah, if people want to know a little bit more about that, you can check it out on the Landlord Page YouTube channel. You can check it out on the Avocado Property YouTube channel. And you can check it out on our socials, where we're going to show some 40-second and 90-second clips of it over the weekend. So if you're not following us on all the socials, make sure you do, because we post a lot of great free content. You know, we don't charge for our content. None of it is plugging anywhere in particular. We just think it's good for landlords out there, as landlords ourselves, to get a really good insight into that. So Tristan, as we go into November, busy month, seem to be, making headways in a lot of different areas, but busy month for the Landlord Page.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, the podcast has been the main focus of mine for a while. A lot of late nights and early starts has gone into that. A lot of guests organised, but yeah, we've got some exciting podcasts to come out. We've got a few completions as well, which are going in, which is great news. But hopefully we'll see an uplift of instructions as well for those tenants that certainly need the properties. But yeah, busy month for us.
Awesome. Well, great chatting to you. Friday afternoon, nearly 1 o'clock. I wish everyone an awesome weekend. Enjoy Halloween. I think there's fireworks starting this weekend as well. Everyone stay safe. Check out some of the Avocado Property pumpkin. If anyone's up for getting involved with a competition and they want to check out our pumpkin challenge, and you can tag your own pumpkin, potentially win some prizes. In fact, the prizes are behind me here. They're pretty epic, but you're going to have to go on Instagram and Facebook page for Avocado Property to find them out. So, Tristan, as always, great to speak to you. And I hope everyone enjoys episode 2 of the podcast. Like I say, it came out this morning. Episode 3 is next week with Mike, our own. Make sure you subscribe to the Apple or Spotify channel. And of course, you can check us out, the Landlord Page on YouTube as well. Have a great weekend all.